Nigeria is a nation of vibrant cultures, breathtaking beauty, and boundless potential. But beneath the surface, a complex web of challenges threatens to tear us apart, from our economic challenges to ethnic tensions to political rascality. The problems facing our nation seems repetitive, dispensation after dispensation. But what if the solution lies not in the politicians, but in the very foundation of our democracy? Our constitution, written decades ago, is crying out for reform. Now, some people would say that there is absolutely nothing wrong with the constitution. It only needs to be better enforced. Others would say that, there's a need for a complete makeover of our constitution that will truly represent the needs of the Nigerian people. Join us on this journey as we explain and, of course, explore the possibilities of constitution review. Can it address the imbalances in resource allocation? Can it strengthen our institutions and ensure accountability? To discuss the constitution, what exactly do Nigerians want, is the founding partner, the lawsuit, Ifeoma Ben. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Also joining us virtually is a finance and strategy consultant, Jonathan Ikolumba, and also a policy consultant, Timi Olagunju. Welcome to the program.
Hi.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm going to just dive straight in. Does the 1999 Constitution, is there any need to actually amend this Constitution or totally change it?
Okay. There is a need for an amendment or review. But then what matters is not really the amendment, but the political will to implement the provisions of the Constitution. So there are many laudable provisions of the Constitution, but a lot of them are being violated or infringed upon. So in as much as there is need for us to amend the Constitution, several aspects that need to be updated because of so many things that have changed, there is need for the leaders to think more about ways of implementing the specific provisions of the Constitution, even when it seems not to favor them. So we need to have that political will to do the right thing.
Okay, so we've been on this conversation for a while now. I know that in the past dispensation, I think it was not even Buhari's government, it was Jonathan's government. We had a confab where, a lot of people came together and the profile solutions, they had a document. So what happens to that particular document? Why do we need to go back over and over again on the same issue?
So that's still the same thing. We're talking about implementation. We have a lot of working documents that have been prepared over the years, and certain summits, conferences, like the one you just mentioned, they confirm, but then there are resolutions reached. But you see, implementation is our key problem, and we have to look at this problem, this key issue again, and see how we can just address it headlong. So by the time we start implementing even what we have, we may not even need to talk about new ones. So let's even look at what we have on ground, the documents we have on ground, what we have reviewed over the years, what have been resolutions have been reached, and see how we can start taking steps. So it's just about action. So taking steps to implement and do the right thing. So by the time we finish implementing all those ones, then we can start talking about other things, other new things to add. So there's definitely need for amendment, but it goes beyond the amendment. What matters mostly is the political will to take reasonable steps to implement.
So in essence, you're saying the 1999 Constitution is good enough?
Well, it's good in some respects, and we still need to review. But like I said, even when we review, if we don't act upon it, then it wouldn't be of any benefit.
All right, quickly, I need to pick the thoughts of Jonathan. Jonathan, what do you think on this issue? Do you think we need a new constitution, or just like our very great guests in the studio said, do we need the political willpower to use the one we already have?
Okay, thank you for having me. My thought generally will be around understanding why, first of all, we're having this conversation as to whether we need or do we even need to review? I think that one thing that's come out strong, I mean, so if we look at the 99 Constitution, this is about 25 years into it. I think one of the clear things we've obviously seen has been, what I might say, the over-domineering influence of the center on the governance of the country. I mean, if you just think back to, was it as recent as last month, to the landmark judgment, just empowering the local government to be able to receive funds directly from the federal government. So I think that that's the real issue. And that's why, whether it comes in from the perspective of an entirely new constitution or an amendment to the existing one, I think it just comes back to the issues around really looking at rethinking the concept of federalism as it should be in this, within the context of Nigeria, and just asking ourselves, right, whether it has worked. So I think that regardless of that conversation of whether we should review or come up with a new one, I think we need to really come up with a very strong understanding of why the current one hasn't really worked. And I think for me, the best way to couch it is that we've seen we've overpowered the center at the expense of the other different units, which is really around the states and the local government. So I think that that's really the issue. Why is the center so powerful? Maybe start to look at things that are in the exclusive list and rethinking that in the dynamics. I mean, this is 2024, 25 years on, should we have some of those things there? And that will largely just be the conversation, and such that we can then determine. I think there are quick wins. If we wanted to go through the route of entirely coming up with something new, to be honest, the process in itself of arriving at that might require a lot of political political considerations. I don't know if it's something that we can achieve. So I also have to think about the practicality around that.
So, Jonathan, you made you've made a very important point, and I think it's also part of the point she made. The political willpower. So why is it that we cannot necessarily even enforce, let me use the word, the great parts of the Constitution currently? Why is politics such a huge problem?
So I think the real thing is, I think politics has trumped a lot of things. And I think that I start from the design of the current one we are using. I think there was a lacuna in itself with the current constitution that we're using. And one could argue whether it was deliberately done, right? It was fostered on us. That's also another point to make. I mean, this came from the military government to us. So it was that really inclusive in terms of the design around that constitution? And we've seen that politics has trumped a lot of actions when we even speak about even the idea of an amendment to the constitution or even a review of the constitution. I think a broader conversation would be, how can we make politics not too attractive? Because I think that is really what is going in the way of this constitutional amendment or constitutional review. So is there a way we can sort of, maybe as citizens, I mean, it's good we have this kind of conversations like we're having today, but how can we make politics not too attractive such that it doesn't come in the way of any of this discussion? I think that's also something to really put forward.
All right. Timmy, just speaking of from where Jonathan stopped, how can we make politics less attractive? Now, Section 70 of the 1999 Constitution stipulates that a member of the Senate or House of Representatives shall receive such salary or other allowances as revenue, mobilization, allocation, and fiscal commission may determine. Now, a hot topic has been the fact that the senators are receiving as high as 29 million. I just recently finished watching an interview that was actually granted by a past senator. He said that he was earning 14 million and that the current senators are earning 29 million. So, is it that this RAMFAC, the body that is supposed to be in charge, is not doing their job, or the senators have found a way to just sort of, use the opportunity and enrich themselves?
Absolutely important point is being raised here. Only the senators actually know what their actual state of salary is at the moment. And the key question is that a democracy? In view of the Freedom of Information Act, There have been certain requests by the media and civil society for an actual tabulation of what the actual receipts of members of the National Assembly is, but it seems like it has been constituted in a way that it seems like a cult-like covering, such that it is until when a member of the National Assembly does not return to the House that they begin to state, what the other one is receiving, which should not be the case. So and then it boils down to a fundamental problem. If the foundation be destroyed, like I like to say, what can the makeup artists do than put powder, right? And so when you look at the key question here, the key question is a foundational problem, and which is the question of whether the federal government has become too lucrative, such that, and when I say the federal government, I mean both the executive and the parliamentarians. As you remember, some of the parliamentarians have accused ministers also, which are members of the executive, of collecting jumbo pay, and that people should look towards the ministers and not to the National Assembly. So it's been a pinpointing game, which means that fundamentally our federal government structure is faulty, which brings us gladly to the Constitution. Look, we need a constitutional framework that allows for fiscal federalism in terms of control at the federal level and in terms of financial, resources at the federal level, where there is states are allowed to have more control over their resources and contribute a portion to the federal government. Those are the kind of things we need to look at, where states are allowed to collect VAT revenue, and also company income tax, particularly for small and medium companies, so that it would incentivize states to support this kind of establishments and then pay the federal government a portion. So these are fundamental issues that needs to be resolved at that level, where parliamentarians are not full-time parliamentarians. You understand? Because of necessity is the mother of invention, right? The necessity of the Nigerian state cannot afford all the luxurious lifestyle, whether it is 19 million, 20 million, those are not small money to receive in a month. How many Nigerians receive close to 500,000 in a month?
Yes, but again, we've been having these conversations since the democratic dispensation in this country. And the people that have the ability to actually enforce, or even for example, the senators are supposed to checkmate the executives, right? The judiciary is supposed to mediate. But you can see that all these three arms of government seems to be in the same bed. So how are we now supposed to make sure that we move from complaining? So who are the people that are supposed to help us make sure that, our resources as a nation is being managed? How do we do it? Our hands seems to be tied.
You see, that's the challenge. And that also brings us to a core issue. You see, which is the fact that the judiciary should be the hope of the common man. You and I. But when the judiciary seems to be seen or viewed or perceived to be politically interfered with, it becomes a challenge. And so the failure of the judiciary, right, to provide some level of checkmate as an arm of government will leave it to the arm of government called the people. Look, senators, members of House of Reps, state members of House of Assembly, ministers and the likes. This is a warning. They need to step up the game. Look at the previous protests that we've had. I've had the cost to study the evolution of protests globally. Look at the Bangladesh protests, right? It didn't just start. It has started many years ago. It started like 1,000 people plus. Before you know it, a year later, the protest was quelled, came back again. 6 months later, it was came back again. And then it started building momentum over time. Look, Nigeria might be sitting on a keg of gunpowder. Usman Danfodio said, conscience is an open wound. Only truth can heal.
Okay.
If you look at the trajectory of protest as it goes, you might be the members of the National Assembly and the arms of government might sufficiently push the Nigerian people to take laws into their hands. Before that happens,
we barely have 4 minutes, so I just really need to also, hear the thoughts of other guests. Ifeoma, you are a lawyer, not just any lawyer. You are a founding partner, the lawsuits. How would you assess the judiciary? Because that is an area that you understand. How would you assess the judiciary in this country?
Thank you. The judiciary has a problem, if I may put it that way, because first of all, they say he who pays the piper dictates the tune. We've been clamoring for independence of the judiciary. Of course, the Constitution provides for that, but then when it comes to actual independence, does the judiciary have that? The answer is no, because a lot of things, starting from the appointment of judges, with the way their remuneration and everything is being handled, the allowances and their upkeep, you see that the executive plays a lot of key roles in the judiciary, and that affects their independence. So though they have the right under the Constitution to do the right thing, but you see that when the state governor's interest is at stake, the person might be thinking of, what if after doing this I lose my job, or they bring up one petition or the other against me? How do I fend for my family, or how do I still survive as a member of, as a judge, for instance, in the state or in other, whether the Court of Appeal or the, at the Supreme Court. So you see that there's always political interference, and that is part of the main problems that we are having. So this political interference affects a lot of things. So even the judiciary has, over the years, used its power to try to protect themselves from this undue interference. We fought sometime many years ago about, financial autonomy.
Yeah.
So
how did that go? Is there a provision for financial autonomy of the judiciary?
Yes, so the judiciary, we even went to court. They took the government to court and won. But then the implementation as well has also been a problem. Some states, some states are trying to do better, while some others are still lagging behind. So when even the judiciary, certain things that affect the judiciary as a body, and they carry it out using their powers to fight the government, yet the government is still resistant in most cases, it becomes a problem.
So what is the way forward? How can we solve this?
So of course we can't stop fighting, because we have to always fight for our rights. The judiciary has to have that strong will to continue to fight for the right thing to be done. And because when you sit back and see, okay, what if I do this and it doesn't yield results? Of course, you wouldn't actually get any result. But when you keep fighting, having that strong will to do the right thing, so even if it means fighting the government, then one day, it would have effects, the necessary effects.
So we also noticed that there was a drastic increase in the salaries and the allowances in the judiciary when the new government came in. Is there any reason for that?
Of course, it's the government that will answer for that. But then, the judges also are doing a lot of work. The judges are doing a lot of work, and their welfare should also not be undermined. Of course, if a judge whose full-time job, a judge is not allowed to practice as a lawyer, so all his earnings, all his business is from what he or she does. Of course, we say there's no lady at the bar, so we use he, but of course we still know that we are women. So when you're full-time, this is your full-time job, and you're committing your life, your entire being. A judge can have a lot of cases, even over 1,000, sitting in one court, and the person is sitting every day or from morning till late in the afternoon, committing everything. So it is just good for them to be well taken care of.
I agree
so
with
whether
you.
or not, and even comparing it to what happens in the executive.
We need to take a short break now. Ifeoma, just hold that thought, because we still need to talk about the timing of the increase and the timing of the cases in the court. Rubbin'minds continues after this break. Welcome back to Rubbin'minds. Before we went on the break, we were having a conversation on the Constitution. What exactly do Nigerians want? Do we want a new Constitution, or do we really need more of the political willpower to enforce the 1999 Constitution that we already have? I was having a conversation with Ifoma. So Ifoma, you were speaking about the great work that the judiciary does and why it's very important that they are compensated well. But since you also said that the executives have a very huge role to play in terms of controlling those resources that is being allocated to the judiciary, don't you think it's a bit of political timing, especially owing to the fact that even when the case, we had cases from the election tribunal, right? And then in the same space, you also saw like a huge increase in, the allowances for the judiciary.
Okay, talking about the timing of the increase in their compensation, right? So I would really look at whether it was really necessary to increase their salaries or their compensation or their welfare package. So, well, the timing plays a role, but then what I would rather focus more on is whether this payment is proper. So, are they, from the time their welfare packages were reviewed, looking at the economic realities, was it proper to have increased it? Was it proper to have reviewed the welfare package, irrespective of the timing when it was done? So, after answering that question, we now look at the timing. So if looking at it critically and looking at the volume of work they do, and also considering the fact that they put in their entire life, their career, so they cannot do any other legal work while sitting as a judge. So they must earn their living from there. So looking at the entirety of what they do and the time and effort they commit, and also the stress and everything involved, I think it would be appropriate to say that they should be well taken care of. Right. Because if they are not well taken care of, then they might be tempted to do other things that might jeopardize their position. Okay. So it might not have been proper, the timing to when that was done, but then I would rather look at the propriety or otherwise of the action. All
right, Jonathan, you're a finance and strategy consultant. Yes, the local governments now have the financial autonomy. Do you think that will make a difference with the allocation that they will be getting directly from the federal? Okay. So I said, now that local governments have financial autonomy, what difference would it make to the Nigerian people? Jonathan, now that the local governments have financial autonomy, what difference would it make to the Nigerian people? All right, Timmy, I would like you to take that question. What difference will it make now that the local government now has financial autonomy?
In the sense of the extent of that financial autonomy, only legal framework like the constitutional, review that will count. But what matters is that with this court framework now, it is not enough that the local governments have financial autonomy. Local governments also must be made and mandated to be accountable to the people. In practical sense, something like once every 2 months, local government should be mandated to converse with the people, both physically and virtually, right, about their affairs and the fiscal financial situation in the local government. That is also very important because it is not just enough that they have financial autonomy. And also, in terms of local government taxes, it's important that local government taxes, now that they have some measure of autonomy, that local government taxes are streamlined based on developmental needs. You see all this approach where some touts act as local government officials and collect illegal taxes from common Nigerians need to stop. there is a need for local governments to ensure that it is not just financial autonomy as well, there's also political autonomy. That is why there is a need for a review of the Constitution. Because financial autonomy without political autonomy is like a stool without a leg.
Interesting. If I may very quickly, I want to talk about how the Constitution protects us as a people. What do you think? How efficient do you think this current Constitution is in protecting the people that I would like, the demography I would like to call the minorities? For example, women in politics. Some states have zero female representation, and we've seen a downward participation of women in government. In fact, this current dispensation, women are occupying only 3% of the seats in the Senate and about 4% in the House of Representatives. Do you think we have areas in the Constitution that protects the demographies that we would like to call like the minority?
Okay, when it comes to minority protection, for the demography that you are talking about now, that's where areas that we really need to work on the Constitution, because we need to strengthen the Constitution in that regard to make it strong in such a way that it becomes mandatory to encourage women, the young people, to participate in politics, because you cannot shave somebody's head in his absence. So you can't be talking about women issues and only men are discussing it, because they wouldn't understand the real issue for the women and the youth. So it is very important when we are now talking about the constitutional review. These are areas that we need to look at. Probably we could consider quota system or something that would say we need a certain percentage of women. So even if it is, of course, we are calling for equal representation. So there should be men there, women there, and other young people also, because there are certain things that pertain to these people that only them alone can understand and can also fight and protect. So if the people there don't understand the peculiarities of this demographics, they wouldn't actually, do certain things or carry out or enforce policies that would be in the interest of this minority group. So it's very important, and it's, a lot of people, civil society organizations, and even women groups have called for equal representation, at the in politics. Yeah. So possibly we could look at incentive or do certain things even at the political party levels to say, for women who are coming up to vie for positions, maybe you get the form free. So I learned that some people or some political parties have actually started doing that, or do certain things that would really say, okay, we have a certain percentage, and since it is a constitutional provision, then political parties will want to comply. Okay. With that, by encouraging people, calling on women or the young people to come and pick forms so that they would comply with the Constitution. So when we have such enshrined in the Constitution, it makes it much more
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ifeoma.
Thank you.
Big thanks to Jonathan and also Timmy for joining us on the program.